are showing screen and we're recording. Yep. Hey everybody, it's Melanie Anderson here with Anderson Education. Super excited you guys are joining us today. I have Lori Brower here with Lori Brower Photography. She has spent the last 2 days with us mentoring here in Hagerstown, Maryland at our studio. And we are getting ready to process 4 of her images that she took between yesterday and today. So we're super excited to showcase post-production to her and to be able to share that with you guys. So stay tuned, stick around. We're going to process 4 images. Carissa here is our lead designer. She's going to walk you through everything. A couple of side notes I want to give you a heads up on. As we're processing these images, I want you to know that we also utilize a company called Prime Edits, and it's primeedits.com that takes care of a lot of our senior work and our volume work now, as well as our boudoir, children, and families post-production. It's really important for you guys to know how to edit images, but keep in mind there are companies out there that really specialize in this, and this is a real time saver to be able to use another company so that you can utilize that time to market your business. So I just wanted to kind of give them a quick plug. Although we're going to show you some quick tips and ideas of how we do things, keep in mind that, if you're really stressing over post-production, that there are other resources out there. And I think if you use the code Melanie or Melanie Anderson, that gives you a free month. So let me know what you guys end up. If you have any questions, this will be posted on YouTube and into the Anderson Education site. But feel free to post any questions you have, and either myself or Carissa will chime in. So, hey, Lori, say hi.
Hi.
Hey, everybody. All right. And Carissa is going to take it over now. So here we go.
Okay. So what we're going to start with is the images that were already selected from the session we just photographed. So I already have them prepped and ready in a separate folder called Processed, and I have the raws selected. We always start from the raws. You have so much more data that you can access versus processing just a JPEG. So I'm going to bring those into Photoshop, and it's going to pull up the Camera Raw tool within Photoshop. So here's where I'm going to do a lot of the color correcting and, adjust some other things before I actually bring it into process. So for this image, first off, I'm going to adjust the exposure a little bit, maybe bring up the shadows a little bit here as well. And then I'm going to adjust the white balance a little bit. I know this is like a cream wall, but I'm going to see what the white balance does. And then kind of manually adjust it from there. So to do that, you hold down the Shift key and click on a neutral color area. So that kind of adjusted some of the magentas and everything, but I still want it a little warmer because this is kind of a warmer area. And I'm still going to bump it up a little bit more. Maybe bump it up and then take down the highlights a little bit because there's some highlights here that are pretty hot. But we'll probably do some manual painting on that as well. For every image, I always bump up the clarity. This is like a new feature for CS6 and CC, but it's something I always do. It helps really, like if I did it really extreme, you can see like how, HDR that is. That's kind of straight extreme, and it's also destructive. We have some other filters that we use, like Nik software. We have a bunch of filters that we can use that I can decide if I don't like it, then I can take it off. So with the clarity, I usually stay around like 10 or so. And if it's like a sports image, I would do it a little bit more to kind of like get that HDR going like from the get-go. So I think that's a good start for that one. So I'll go ahead on to this next one. Going to do the white balance. I'm going to see if her teeth, yeah, so that helped a lot. Bump the exposure up a little bit here, a little bit of clarity. Looks good. All right, and this is easy, is the white wall. Now she looks very orange, so I am gonna try to manually adjust that a little bit. But we're probably gonna have to do some painting just within the. Okay, on to the next one. And bump that up a little a little bit. Did I clear down this one? Yeah. Okay, so I'm going to select all and open images. So now this is just going to take it into Photoshop. Okay, so first off, I always crop our images. We crop them to 11 by 14 by 300 dpi. Unless, they purchase like a 16 by 20 or 16 by 24. If it's larger than 11 by 14, I crop it to that size so that it doesn't lose any resolution or anything when we go to order it. But we typically do 11 by 14 for all of our images. Now this is shot pretty tight. So I may actually do an 8 by 11 or 8 by 12 format so that we don't lose as much of the image there. Because I like being able to see more of her body. Again, by 300 dpi, that's the print resolution. Later, we're going to crop it to 72 dpi for web when we go to watermark and do the web. So after I crop, then I use our Imagenomic portraiture filter. And this is going to do our skin softening and take out a lot of the blemishes. So just kind of zoom in here. So that's like really high opacity on that, but you can see the difference on softening her skin. So that's a little bit too much. So I'm going to take the opacity down a little bit. And that's a lot better. So I'm just going to hit OK. Now for blemish removal, I use the patch tool. So that is over here. Sometimes your spot healing brush tool is first, but I prefer the patch tool. I feel like I get more control over where I'm sampling from to remove the blemishes. The spot healing brush tool does it on its own, and sometimes it gets a little funky or gray or muddled out, looks kind of weird. So with the patch tool, I like more control. So I'm just going to kind of remove even some of these moles just because they get a little distracting. We want the focus and the attention to be, on her eyes, on her face. So anything that kind of catches my eye that is a little distracting, you go ahead and take out. Certainly if they have prominent birthmark or if they're, very attached to a certain mole or something, we, ask them ahead of time and, decide if we're going to remove that or not for them. But like I said, anything that just kind of catches my eye while I'm looking. It's almost like when you kind of focus but you don't focus. That's kind of how I look for things. Just kind of overlooking her whole face and not necessarily at her face, just trying to see any color variations or, small markings that kind of distract. So with the patch tool, I'm just circling. You just click and circle, and then you click and drag for the skin that you want to sample it from. So it's really easy, and as you can see, I get pretty fast at it once you get used to it. Another tool, so I don't like this hair right here, so another tool in CS6 is the content aware. So I use the patch tool, circle it, hit shift delete, and then this comes up, and then use content aware. And then a lot of times, see, it took out the hair for me and made it look natural. Sometimes it gets funky, you have to kind of play with it, but a lot of times it does a really good job at removing things, for me. So I'm just going to zoom out, see if there's anything else. Sometimes, make sure you look at the surroundings as well, the wall that they're up against. If there's, you know, certain things in there. It doesn't have to be perfect, but trying to make it the best possible version is a good idea. So now I'm going to go ahead and sharpen the eyes. We have an action. Well, so this is Kubota Image Tools. They have this dashboard, and this is what houses all of their actions. But what's also really cool is it also shows up other actions you already have downloaded onto your computer. So like I have some Florabella actions, I have some Great Gatsby actions, I have, you know, countless others. But what's cool is within here, there's a favorite section, and I can favorite just the ones that I use the most often. So instead of having to like scroll through all of the actions and, you know, find which one I want, I just have the ones I use the most often saved within here. So our eye sharpening action, this is one that we got, I don't even know how long ago, but it's called Naomi Angel Eye Enhance. There's a lot of eye sharpening actions out there. This is just the one that we've always used and works best for us. So it just kind of brings up this dialogue. It brings up these layers over here. So the first one's a sharpen layer. So I always paint it at around 80% and just have a soft brush and just paint it on her eye there. So you can see before and after, it just really sharpens up the eyes there. Now it also has these other layers, this brighten and darken and define layer. With this, I'll do a little bit, you know, especially for an up-close shot like this. I'm going to paint it on. It's going to be intense at first, but I'm going to adjust the opacity of the layer then. So this just kind of gives it extra pop. But I typically reduce the brighten about halfway, and just to kind of make it look natural but still pop. So here's the before and the after. So that just like dramatically, you know, enhances her eyes and, you know, really makes you like, wow, she's got amazing eyes. And, you know, that's what we're doing. We're trying to enhance them and really show the best possible version of them in these portraits. So I'm going to go ahead and flatten that. Next, I'm going to use, this is a Florabella action, clean base. I think it's in their color play action pack. I use this a lot, especially on, you know, outdoor scenes and everything like that. So it comes up really extreme, really harsh, but I'm going to adjust the opacity. But what I really like about the clean base action is it kind of takes out some of the gray tones. Like if you kind of see, like it just bumps up the contrast, brightens, and, you know, helps take out some of the gray murkiness, if that makes sense. So again, a little bit higher contrast, but it really kind of pops her image a little bit. I'm going to do a color balance layer to try to play with some of her oranginess going on. So just going to kind of play with the different toggles here to kind of try to help remove some of the orange. So that kind of helped a little bit. She was just feeling a little saturated. Speaking of saturation, this orange sign back here, I don't like it. But because of her hair there, I could clone that out and, you know, everything like that. But another option that we can do is take a hue and saturation layer and desaturate, maybe not everything. And now this is a layer mask. So I'm going to invert it by going Command I, and then I have my brush, and I'm just going to paint it where I want the saturation to work. And there we go. So we still have, you know, the texture on there, but we're not losing. It's just, that's a lot easier than like going through and like cloning and stuff like that. So that's cool. I'm going to go ahead and flatten. I know I fixed, there's like one hair over here and I wanted to clean that up a little bit. So yeah. And now I do want to fix this a little bit more. I know I lied. But it helped with the orange smeariness. So let's back that up a little bit. And I think we'll probably add a little texture on this one as well. Okay. So let's do, this is a Kubota action. I do this action on everything, sometimes multiple times. Sharpen custom high pass. So this just really sharpens up the whole image and kind of, helps finish it. You can kind of see a little bit before and after there. And I'm going to go ahead and find a soft texture that I like. A lot of the textures that I use are from Florabella. I have a huge folder of textures, 1,400 items. But for portraits, I found a lot of Florabellas are really nice. But you can find textures like everywhere, even if you just like Google it. You can find some free ones too. So I'm going to take a black and white one. I think I'm going to do, actually, I think I'm going to do this one. So I'm just going to drag it on top of the image here and get it to fit the way I want. And now I'm going to take that layer and do soft light blending mode. And so you can kind of see just how, I just wanted a little bit on the edges there. So I'm going to do a layer mask on that layer so that I can paint away what I don't want. It's better than erasing, because if later I realize, oh, I didn't get too close here, or, whatever, it'll allow me to go back and change that. Everything you can do non-destructively is best. That's, one of the great things about layers in Photoshop. So I'm just painting away the areas I don't want the texture. Make sure I'm at 100. And just make sure you're using a soft round brush so you don't have any like harsh lines. So that looks really pretty. I'm going to try a vignette. This is from Kubota as well. Usually on brighter images or like on the white wall, we don't typically do it, but because we have the texture, it might look good. So we're just going to see. So the vignette dialog comes up, gives you an option on, how harsh you want the actual vignette to show up. So I was going to try to show you a preview here, and so I usually try to soften it. Okay. And I'm going to brush off her shoulder so it doesn't look like she got burnt or something. And here as well. But it just kind of, yeah, I like the way that looks over top of the texture there. So yeah, so I think that image looks pretty good. So I'm going to go ahead and flatten and save. Now you can save it as a Photoshop if you wanted, with all the layers and everything like that. We don't. It just would take up too much space to have, PSDs of every single image. Usually we don't ever want to go back and change something. If we were doing like a custom piece or a poster or something with like design, always save PSD. But for portraits, we don't really need to. All right, so let's go to the next image. I typically process all of them first because I want the crops to be high res, so I'm not having to change the crop a lot. And then like once I'm done, I'll do the watermark and crop for web. So this one, I think I actually do like the longer portion as well. So we'll just keep with that, the 8x12 by 300. Now with this, I want to make sure it's straight. because she's with a straight wall and there's, some leading lines there. We want to make sure that those are straight as possible. Okay, pretty. Okay, so same process, filter and our portraiture. I'm going to zoom in on her face. And because she's farther away, I don't need it as intense. So I like that. Okay. I'm just gonna, again, remove some of these moles and everything. That is distracting. Do you have any questions so far? Feel free to chime in, if I ever do something and I didn't explain it or something like that.
You're so good at it.
Thanks. It's really, once you learn the basics and the shortcuts, like, we fly through these. We usually spend, I don't know, 3 or 4 minutes per image, all depending on, what needs done. If there's a ton of flyaways or something like that, obviously that's going to take more time. But, we try to be aware of how much time we're spending on an image. Mm-hmm. Something else to consider, we don't need to be this close, nitpicking, because generally, this is going to be an 8x10 or 5x7, even a 16x20, you're only going to be like that close. Mm-hmm. So, don't feel like you have to get every single little pixel that is off.
Okay.
It's always good to zoom back and, get the right perspective on it. Right. So she's got a little bit, there's just some darkness under her eyes in the shot. So I'm going to take the clone stamp tool, and have it a soft round, and about 40% opacity. And I'm going to sample from below, like directly below, and just kind of lightly go over this. So that just is basically sampling her skin, so we don't lose the texture or anything, but helps to brighten, those bags a little bit. And it still looks natural. So. Okay. That's looking pretty good. Alright. So now I'm going to do the eye sharpening. Same thing, bring up the dialogue. 80% for the sharpening. And then a little bit of brighten. And a little bit of darken and define. And I'm just going to lower those layers a little bit. But yeah, that looks really good. Ah. Now her eyes match her dress. Alright. So now I'm going to do clean base again. Again, Florabella action. And just lower the opacity. Okay. I'm going to do a curves layer just to lower the highlights a little bit as well. And I'm going to try a Just Pop. So this is a Kubota filter action. Just Pop. So that kind of gives a nice little effect for that. Kind of brings up the white brick for that there. So I like that. What I'm debating about is this line. I think I'm going to leave it. I think what I'm going to do is just lighten it a little bit. So to do that, I'm going to do let's do a layer. So I'm going to do a new layer, and then I'm going to take my brush, put it to white, and just paint over it, but then I'm going to play with it. There's like so many different ways you can do different things in Photoshop, so you kind of have to figure out, what works for you. I could have done an adjustment layer and, done it that way. I could have just cloned it out. I could have, whatever. I'm going to try this way and see how it comes out. So that just kind of helps lighten it a little bit. Maybe I'll do desaturation because it looks like it is a little colored. And then just bump up the lightness a little bit. So I'm just, looking at that line. I'm going to inverse that layer, mask, and a little smaller. Trying to decide if I just want to clone it out. Yeah, I think I'm gonna. After all that, I think I'm just gonna clone it out. So I'm gonna go ahead and flatten my layers. And a lot of times you just have to try, and just play around with it, see what you like, see what you don't like, and, figure it out along the way. So I'm gonna just select this and I'm gonna do the content aware. So that's Shift Delete after circling it with the patch tool. So that did a pretty good job. What was making me nervous was this area with her hair. So we're going to see the content aware might really help us out for that. All right, so it's doing a good job. Again, patch tool, circle, Shift Delete. Okay. Yeah, that's doing good. Just gotta be careful right in here. Ooh. Okay. Delete. Boom. Okay. So it looks better. Yeah. Just gonna take some of these out. Cool. Finish it off. I'm gonna just do a sharpen layer. And that looks really pretty. Right, this one I am gonna crop as 11 by 14. Just pull that in a little bit. Okay. Portraiture. And since we're up closer, I'm gonna bump it up just a little bit more. That's good. And first thing I noticed was this little hole in her dress. So I'm just going to content aware that. And there we go. Content aware is like amazing. So if you don't have Photoshop CS6 or CC, you really should upgrade just for that, because I use it all the time. I mean, it just helps like with hair and stuff too, because like, well, it didn't do a great job there, but I can kind of fix that. But see, like, say like I went like this. Okay, say I like just dragged it. Like, look how like blurry and gross that gets. So, but if I just, content awared it, a lot of times it's going to do a much better job. So it kind of got cleaner. I just had something funky in the middle, but I can kind of fix that. So, like I said, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. So just kind of trying to clean up some of these stray hairs. And if you can notice it when you're photographing, it's going to save you a lot of time in production. So trying to be aware of, and once like, if you're editing your own photos, you're going to like notice things then for the next time. Like, oh, I'm going to fix that. Or, oh, there's a little sign in the background and I can move it. Oh, I'm going to just move it instead of having to clone it out later. Everything that you can do to fix in camera is better than fixing later. Same thing with her eyes here. Just a little bit of shadowing. So clone tool, 40%. Boom. And I always try to take care of any blemishes, or we always want to fix things before we start playing with the filters and the colors and textures and stuff like that. It just kind of helps set a good base, if that makes sense. Because otherwise sometimes like you can just have issues with it if you have like other things going on. So I'm gonna do the eyes now. Now she has great teeth, but if someone didn't have great teeth, I would bleach their teeth as well. And we have an action for that. Actions are amazing. They do things that you can do in Photoshop anyway, but it just makes it easy because you just click one button and then it's ready versus, going through everything. So actions are best friend. So sharpen, gonna do a little brighten, gonna do darken, define. And that's way too intense, so I'm just gonna lower the opacity of those layers. And that looks stunning. I mean, that right there, like, just the eyes makes it from like a nice image to like, wow, right. Like you're immediately drawn in to your eyes, her eyes. Flatten that, clean base. And lower the opacity and bring down the highlights. So adjustment layer, curves. I select the highlights from this point right here. Just kind of drag it down a little bit. Around there is pretty good. I think I'm gonna try some coloring right now for this. I know that I have one. Let's try Summer Peach. So this is Florabella Color Play. Yep. So let's just try this, see how we like it. When I first got these, I like literally just played every single action just so I could see what it is. And so I do have them, I kind of have a good idea of what coloring is, for each of them. But sometimes you just have to play with it depending on the image and the background and all the colors that are already going on. So if I lower the opacity, that might be pretty. So that just kind of adds a nice little touch of softness there. It's taking a little while to load on and off, but I think I'm going to bring in a lens flare as well. So I'm going to go back to my Florabella actions. And they or textures, I'm sorry. They have some light flares that we like to use. So I'm just going to kind of pull in a couple of the ones that I think might look good. And we'll just kind of play with it from there. So within the textures or the lens flares that they give you in the name, it tells you what blending mode to use, so that's really great. So I'm just going to place all these files kind of where I'm thinking of having the direction come from. Okay, so just going to turn them off and do one at a time. So this one, blending mode, screen, and play with the opacity. And I'm going to do a layer mask on that and kind of do a soft brush away from some of her face to kind of give just a natural, like, if the light was actually behind her, but not have it so intense. And just make sure that my brush is on the correct color. So yeah, so I think this could, kind of be pretty, but I'm going to see what the others, look like before we settle on that one. I'm not a fan of this one, so I'm not even going to play with that. But this one is supposed to be on hard light. This might be a little too yellow. not terrible. So I'll do a layer mask on that and, brush some of her face away. So that could be pretty too once we get a vignette on that and sharpen that up. So that's in the standing. So you can see too, like, with textures or lens flares, like you kind of have to play with it and decide. I kind of like this one because I like the little bit of a rainbow in there. All right, so between these three, let's look at them again. What's your favorite, Lori?
The one before this one.
So the first one?
Yeah.
That one?
I think so, yeah.
I think so too. Because I really like the pink on here, and I like the golden light. So I'm going to do a vignette over top, and that'll really help make it pop too. So again, that vignette is from Kubota. So that like really kind of helps bring it in as well. Trying to show before and after. There we go. And I'm going to do a sharpen layer. I'm going to try this edge downer. This is another form of like a vignette from Kubota, but it just does the edges. Kind of like that for over here, but I don't like it there or on her, so I'm just going to brush off. But that kind of just adds a little bit of a edge there, which I think is neat.
Yeah, I like it.
So I think that's really pretty. I like that. So we'll flatten that and save it. One thing I wanted to comment on, I always save at the quality of 10. It was actually, I think, Kubota that I watched a video on, he was talking about it, that 10 is still in the maximum category, but the file size, so let's take a look. So 2.3 megs versus if we had it at 12 is 7.1. So, I mean, I don't know about you, but like we try to be wise with our file sizes, you know, and saving space wise, because the 10 quality is still the highest. It's still going to print great, but is literally half the size of 12. So we always do 10. All right, now Michael here, I'm going to crop 11 by 14. Now, with portraiture on a guy, definitely don't do it as strong because you don't want their skin to be like baby doll smooth. So I'm going to do a lower opacity for him. So patch tool. And I'm going to use the club for his eyes here. So I'm just kind of fixing these little hair things. Again, that would have been easier to fix, you know, when photographing, but no, you're fine.
I'll definitely be more aware.
Yep. You'll be aware once you're the one that's editing the images. Alright, let me do eye sharpen. So you can see I pretty much do the same process for everyone, you know, unless we wanted to do the lens flares, the coloring, or, you know, stuff like that. I have a filter in mind that I think we're going to use for this area. It's a Great Gatsby action. So we're going to try that then. Oops. So 80%, 100% is kind of intense. So I usually do 80% brush for the sharpening. And a little bit of brighten, a little bit of darken, and lower the opacities. And now his one eye is in the shade and the other one's in the light. So I'm actually going to take some of that brighten off because I want to try to balance, you know, the brightness in his eyes. And I think I'm going to try a little bit more darken and define too. So before, after, I mean, it just pops.
Yeah.
Pops the eyes. Okay. So now I'm going to do clean base. opacity. And I'm going to try this filter called Sparrow. This is one of my favorites from Great Gatsby. I really like what it does to the rusty color. But obviously it's kind of like too bright on him and stuff. So I'm going to just lower the opacity a little bit. And it also gives it a great matte finish. That's one thing that I really like about their actions. It's, this whole matte trend, I would say, in production. I've seen it a lot. And so I just did curves with the highlights, but it is making it too dark over here. So I'm just going to paint away the layer for that there. That kind of helps balance the light on his face. And I'm going to do even more for this hot spot. And just going to invert it and paint it where I want it. So that looks cool. I'm going to bring in texture. I think in this one. Oops. And then soft light. And I'm going to do layer mask. And I'm going to brush away. 100%. Actually, I didn't really mind it there. It's more of like skin.
It's really good.
Yeah. Yeah, I like it too. And I'm going to do sharpen layer. And a vignette. I might even do an edge burn too. Just going to lower the opacity a little bit. That looks pretty sweet. So let's do a before and after. So before, which is has potential, and after. Bam!
Wow, yeah.
Awesome image. So yeah, that's that. So you see how quickly we move on, image to image, and
Yeah.
I kind of, had an idea because of similar images that I've done in this area. I knew I liked the sparrow, but I could have played with it more and picked others, but I knew I liked that one. So once we save this one, now we're going to go on to how we do our watermarking and crop for web. So I'm just going to save it in the same folder. All right, so now I'm going to pull up the watermark. So I have watermark in here. So I have it as a PNG with a transparent background. So I just literally drag it onto the image and somewhere around there. And then we set it. And oops, I just realized I had it shifted over. There we go. And flatten it, and then we're going to crop it 11 by 14 by 72 dpi for web. So like I have a preset in my crops called web. Crop it, command save as. You don't want to save over top of your high res. I've made that mistake before, and it sucks because then you have to go back and reprocess the image again to have a high res version for print. So make sure you always save as. And then I changed the name to web at the end, or W, depends on how lazy I'm feeling. So, and then we have it all in our processed, folder. So we, you can see, we have the raws, the high res, and the web. And we can organize that into, folders if we wanted. But all right, so that's it for that image. So Command W, close that window. Same thing. Drag and drop. Set it, flatten it, crop it. Save as, web, save, and close. I mean, you can whip through these pretty quickly. You could even make an action if you wanted. And now this one we did crop as the 12:8, so I do have a setting for that. 8:12:72. Crop it, flatten it, save as, web. The last one here. That. Crop it, web, and that's it. Do you have any questions or thoughts or anything as we finish this up?
Yeah, that was awesome.
All good?
Yeah.
All right. Thanks everybody for tuning in. Krista did an awesome job processing these, and Lori did a great job in photographing. So awesome job, Lori. If anybody has any questions or wants more details on mentorship through Anderson Education, give us a call at 301-393-4515 or send us an email at melanie@anderson-education.com. We will work on some more videos for you. Stay tuned, and thanks for tuning in. Take care, everybody. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.